I thought I'd seen everything a small-town sheriff could see, until Marietta changed. Now, every night at 3:17 a.m., my radio whispers in a voice that knows my name. And no matter how many times I turn it off, the call always comes back, waiting for me to answer. Greetings, every shadow hides a story. Welcome. Under the Bed. It happened in the small riverside town of Marietta, Ohio, late October, 2018. The nights were colder than usual, and the fog from the Ohio River rolled into the streets like a living thing. I'd been the county sheriff for nearly 10 years. My name's Chuck Holloway. I'd worked missing person cases, suicides, the kind of things that leave a scar on you, but nothing ever came close to what started that night. At 2:41 a.m., the dispatcher patched through a 911 call. A woman's voice whispered, almost gasping between every word, "He's standing in my yard." Before the dispatcher could respond, the line went dead. The call traced back to 118 River Road, a property marked as vacant since 2001. The owner, Sarah Kenley, had disappeared 2 decades ago. Her case was one of those local legends we used to scare rookies with. I drove there alone. The streets were empty, only the hum of my cruiser and the static on the radio. When I turned onto River Road, the fog swallowed the headlights. The old Kenley house stood crooked at the end of the lane, half-collapsed porch, windows like black eyes. I called for backup, but the signal broke. Nothing but static hissed back. Inside, the air was heavy, cold enough that my breath hung in front of me. The wooden floor groaned under each step. Dust floated through my flashlight beam. I followed a faint ticking sound to the kitchen, and there it was, an old beige telephone sitting on the table, plugged into nothing, yet the red light blinked as if the call were still active. The receiver was warm, as though someone had just set it down. I checked every room, no footprints, no signs of forced entry, just a half-rotted couch and wallpaper peeling like skin. When I returned to the kitchen, the phone light was off. I thought maybe power was somehow looping through old wiring, but the fuse box was gutted years ago. I remember writing that detail in my report, no electricity present. Then I heard it. A creak from the hallway, deliberate, like weight shifting on the floorboards. I turned my flashlight. Nothing. Just the empty corridor stretching toward the front door. I called out, "Sheriff's Department. Identify yourself." Silence. The ticking started again, but now it was coming from my radio. The voice that came through wasn't my dispatcher. It was the same soft whisper from the call. "He's not in the yard anymore." My stomach twisted. I froze. The voice was right behind me now, same tone, same calm rhythm, but this time it said, "He's in your house." I spun around, flashlight trembling, but there was only the kitchen window and my own reflection. My pulse hammered so loud I thought I'd faint. The phone rang once, a single sharp tone, then silence again. I forced myself to step outside. The night air hit me like ice. I radioed the station again, and now the line worked perfectly. They said no call had been logged at 2:41 a.m. The dispatcher insisted the system hadn't recorded anything for that time. I checked my cruiser computer, no record, no audio file. It was as if the call never existed. Before leaving, I looked back at the house. Through the fog I thought I saw movement behind the window, a faint figure, hair hanging over the face, watching me. But the instant I blinked, it was gone. When I got home, my front door was ajar. I was sure I'd locked it. Inside, everything looked untouched except for one thing, my police radio, lying on the kitchen table. It crackled once, just a breath of static, and then that same whisper again, low and steady. "He's already there." I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the dark until sunrise, staring at the radio, waiting for it to speak again. It never did. But the next morning, when I played back the in-car recorder from my patrol cruiser, I found something buried under the white noise, a woman's voice saying my name. After that night on River Road, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me home. The voice from the radio kept replaying in my head. For days, I tried to explain it logically: interference, old wiring, fatigue. But logic doesn't help when the air inside your own home feels wrong. It was Thursday, 3 days after the call that supposedly never happened. I came into the Marietta Sheriff's Department around 6 a.m. The place was quiet, just the hum of the coffee machine and the flicker of monitors in the surveillance room. Our station had recently installed a new security system, motion-activated cameras covering every corridor. I sat down with Deputy Harris to review footage from the previous night. He looked pale. "You'll want to see this," he said. On the screen, the timestamp read 3:17 a.m., empty hallway, lights dimmed. Then, one by one, the overhead bulbs began to flicker. A door at the far end opened slowly. No one entered, no one left. It just hung there, swaying slightly, as if pushed by air that wasn't moving. I told him to rewind it. When the door opened the second time, a faint shape passed across the frame, a silhouette of a woman, head tilted, hair down to her shoulders. It lasted less than a second, but it was there. Harris tried to joke it off. Maybe a moth on the lens. But there was no light source bright enough to cast a shadow like that. The rest of the footage was uneventful, until exactly 3:17 again the following night. The cameras froze, all 12 of them. Just static in a black screen for 3 minutes straight. When they came back online, the timestamp had jumped ahead to 3:20, and every motion sensor had reset. The system log listed it as manual shutdown, but no one was on duty at that hour. That afternoon, I locked myself in the control room and decided to monitor the live feed personally. I wanted to prove to myself that it was just a glitch. Midnight passed quietly. 1 a.m., nothing. 2 o'clock, still nothing. Then, at 3:15, the lights in the hallway outside my office began to dim. I leaned closer to the monitor. At 3:17, the main corridor camera flickered. The image cleared, and I saw myself. Standing in the hallway. Same uniform, same stance, but I hadn't moved from my chair. My reflection, or whatever it was, turned its head slowly toward the camera and smiled. Just barely. Then the feed cut out. The room went dark except for the glow of the screens. I felt the temperature drop instantly, like the air had been sucked out. I ran into the hallway. It was empty. My footsteps echoed down the corridor. The door to the evidence room, the one from the video, stood slightly open. Inside, every shelf looked undisturbed except for one, the shelf holding old case files from unsolved disappearances. A single folder lay on the floor. When I picked it up, dust puffed out, and the label read Kenley, Sarah, missing, 1998. I hadn't touched that file in years. When I opened it, the first photo inside made my chest tighten, a black and white still of the Kenley house, same angle as my body cam footage from the other night. The second photo, though, wasn't part of any official report. It showed a man standing in the doorway, face obscured by blur. The badge number on his chest was mine. The fluorescent light above me began to buzz, louder and louder, until it popped. I backed out of the room, clutching the file. The hallway was pitch dark except for the faint red glow from the security exit sign. From somewhere behind me came a soft, rhythmic tapping, like a fingernail against glass. I turned, sweeping my flashlight. Nothing. But on the monitor at the end of the hall, the one mounted above the stairwell, I could see the live feed from the evidence room. The door had closed. Slowly, almost tenderly. When I checked the footage the next morning, every second of what I'd seen was gone. The log simply read, footage corrupted, 3 hours 17 minutes and 8 seconds. Harris swore he hadn't touched the system. That night I took the Kenley file home. I shouldn't have. I told myself it was for reference, but deep down, I wanted to understand what I saw. Around 11 p.m., I set the file on my kitchen table and went to grab a beer from the fridge. When I came back, the folder was open, the photos spread out neatly in a line, the last one showing a man standing in a dark hallway, holding a flashlight. My flashlight. My kitchen. I stood frozen. From the radio in the other room came the same whisper I'd heard before, softer this time, almost sympathetic. "He's still watching the tapes." The light in my kitchen flickered once and went out. The morning after the incident with the station cameras, I barely recognized myself in the mirror. My eyes were bloodshot, hands trembling. Every noise in the house made me flinch. Still, I went to work. It was easier to face the department than the silence at home. That afternoon, 2 fishermen walked into the station. They looked shaken. One of them, a man named Reggie, held something wrapped in a towel. "Found this down by the river," he said. "Didn't want to touch it more than I had to." Inside the towel was a rusted police badge. The engraving was almost gone, but I could still make out a number 4317. I checked the system. That badge belonged to Officer Thomas Grave, who vanished in 1998 while responding to a disturbance on River Road. The same address. I didn't tell the fishermen what I knew. I just thanked them and sent them home. After they left, I sat staring at the badge. The metal was cold, but I could swear it pulsed faintly, as if it carried a heartbeat. I bagged it as evidence and opened the old case file. Graves' last dispatch log read, "Arrived at the Kenley residence. Caller female. No sign of distress." The log ended at 3:17 a.m., the same minute our cameras kept freezing. I drove down to the river that evening. The water was calm, gray, the surface broken only by drifting leaves. The fishermen's footprints led me to a small sandbar near an abandoned boathouse. I crouched down and saw tire tracks, old but deep, pressed into the mud, police cruiser tires, judging by the pattern. I followed them a few meters until they disappeared into the water. Something about the air changed there. My phone lost signal, and even the sound of the river seemed to fade. I turned back toward the woods, and for a moment, I saw movement between the trees, a pale shape, like someone watching me from the shade. When I blinked, it was gone. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about Grave. What had he seen here? Why had no one found him? Around midnight, I returned to the station archives. In the back of a dusty cabinet, behind a row of mislabeled boxes, I found an unmarked VHS tape. Faded handwriting across the label read, "Case, River Road, do not view alone." I took it to the evidence room and set it in the old player. The screen flickered to life, static hissing. Then a frame appeared, a man in a patrol jacket standing by the riverbank. The date stamp read October 4th, 1998. Officer Graves' face was partly obscured by fog. He spoke into the camera. The call came from the Kenley house. "No one's here. But, someone's watching me." He turned the camera toward the tree-line. For a split second, I saw a dark silhouette standing between the branches, tall, still, almost human. The tape cut, then jumped to a new angle. Grave was now inside the Kenley house. The same kitchen I'd stood in days ago. He pointed the flashlight at the table. The same phone was there, the same color, the same cracks. He whispered, "The line's dead." The camera panned toward the doorway. Something moved in the darkness, closer than before. Grave gasped, dropped the camera, and the image tilted. I froze the frame, and that's when I saw it. A reflection in the glass door behind him, a man holding a flashlight, wearing my badge. My stomach dropped. I rewound, paused again, zoomed in. It was my face. The timestamp under it read 2018. 20 years after the recording was made. The tape ejected itself with a sharp click. I just sat there, staring at the black screen, listening to the soft hum of the player. Then I noticed something, faint scratches etched into the side of the VHS case. I held it under the light. It read, "If you see yourself, don't go back." I didn't understand what it meant then. But that warning would come back to me later, when it was already too late. The next morning, I returned to the river. The fog was thicker than before, heavy like smoke. I found the same spot where the badge had been discovered. The sand was smooth now, no footprints, no tire marks. Just one thing remained, a single Polaroid photo half buried in the mud. It showed me standing by the water, my flashlight aimed at something in the fog. Only I had never taken it. By the end of that week, Marietta no longer felt like the town I'd served for a decade. The streets were quiet, but it wasn't peace, it was fear. Calls started coming in from parents saying their kids had gone missing near the river trail. At first, we thought it was teenagers sneaking out, but the fourth report came from a woman I'd known since high school. Her son, 13 years old, hadn't come home after fishing with his friend. Both boys were gone. We began a full search. I sent out deputies, dogs, drones, everything we had. The woods near the old dam were thick with fog. By sunset, the air smelled like wet metal. The dogs refused to move deeper, they whimpered and pulled away from the path. I kept going alone, following the faint sound of running water until I reached the dam. There, in the mud, I found barefoot tracks. Small, like a child's. They led from the tree line to the edge of the dam, then vanished. The ground wasn't disturbed beyond that point, no slide marks, no signs of a fall. It was as if whoever walked there had simply disappeared into the air. When I radioed the team, the signal broke into static. Then, beneath the static, I heard a faint voice, Sheriff Holloway. I froze. It was one of the missing boys, Evan. His voice was shaking. "She's calling for you." The message ended. I sprinted back toward the vehicles, shouting into the radio, but there was no response. When I reached the trucks, the other deputies were gone. Their radios, flashlights, even coffee cups sat where they'd been minutes ago. The engines were off, keys still in the ignition. I stood in silence, the fog pressing against my skin. Then I saw her. At the far end of the dam, through the mist, a woman in a pale dress, long dark hair, barefoot. She wasn't moving. Just standing there, her head slightly tilted as if listening. I raised my flashlight, but the beam dimmed the moment it touched her. When the light flickered back, she was gone. I drove home in near total darkness. My hands wouldn't stop shaking on the wheel. At 3:17 a.m., I woke up to the sound of dripping water. My boots were soaked. I followed the sound into the kitchen. The faucet was off, but a puddle stretched across the floor. Floating in it was my badge, the one I'd left locked in my office. The next morning, I reviewed the body cam footage from the night before. The final 2 minutes showed me walking toward the dam. The camera angle shifted suddenly, and for half a second, a reflection appeared in the water below, a woman's face, pale and motionless, staring up at me. Then the screen went black. Deputy Harris came in later that day. He hadn't answered his phone for hours. He looked exhausted, eyes hollow. "We got another message," he said. He played it from his radio. A child's voice again, "She's calling him by name." Then silence. That evening, we searched the dam once more. Nothing. Not a single trace of the boys. As I turned to leave, something gleamed in the mud near my truck tires. I bent down and picked it up, a second police badge. Same design, same rust as the one from the river. But this one wasn't Graves. The number read number 4381, mine. The air went still. No wind, no sound, no movement. I set the badge on the hood of my truck and backed away slowly. My breath fogged the air, though the night was warm. For a moment, I thought I heard footsteps behind me, bare feet slapping softly against the concrete. When I turned, there was nothing. Driving back to town, I saw something that made my chest tighten. A figure standing by the roadside, the same woman, her dress dragging in the dirt. She didn't move as I passed, just turned her head slightly to follow the car. In my rearview mirror, her reflection was gone, but her voice filled the radio, "He's almost where he belongs." When I got home, the front door was open again. On the kitchen table lay both badges, side by side. They were identical now, same number, same scratches. I realized then that the line between me and the ones who'd vanished was fading. Whatever was happening in Marietta wasn't haunting me. It was replacing me. By the time October came to an end, I hardly recognized Marietta. The leaves had turned black around the edges, the fog never lifted, and people whispered about seeing lights along the river at night. The department was quiet. Half my deputies had taken sick leave, the rest barely spoke. Harris hadn't shown up in 2 days. I spent most nights at my desk, going over every file I could find about River Road, the Kenley house, and the disappearances. There was a pattern. Every 20 years, a sheriff or officer vanished under the same circumstances: a female caller, a house on River Road, a timestamp, 3:17 a.m. It started in 1958 with Sheriff Raymond Cole. Then in 1978, Deputy Miles. In 1998, Officer Thomas Grave. And now, me. I began recording everything. My voice, my patrols, even my thoughts. The first entry on the tape was simple: if you're hearing this, something is wrong in Marietta. By the third night, I could barely finish sentences without hearing another breath in the room. The lights flickered even during the day. At night, I saw reflections of myself in the glass, moving half a second too late. It was 3:17 again when the radio came alive. "Sheriff Holloway," the voice said softly. "She's waiting by the water." I should have ignored it. But something inside me needed to finish it, to see for myself what had been calling every man before me. The streets were empty as I drove down River Road one last time. The fog was thicker than ever, glowing faintly in the beams of my headlights. The Kenley house appeared out of it like a memory refusing to fade. I parked in front, left the engine running, and stepped out. The air was colder than it should have been for October. I could hear the river, though it was nearly a mile away. Inside, the house was the same. The kitchen table. The phone. The smell of damp wood. Only this time, there were footprints on the floor, bare feet, leading toward the basement door. I followed them. The steps creaked under my boots, each one heavier than the last. The basement smelled of earth and mold. My flashlight caught through the dark, and in its beam, I saw shelves lined with files, police reports, each one labeled in neat handwriting: Case, River Road. The earliest dated back to 1938. I pulled one down. Inside were pages of the same sentence written over and over again. "I'm the sheriff of Marietta. Strange things have started happening here." Every page ended with a different name. At the far end of the room stood a desk. On it lay an open journal and a badge, Thomas Graves' badge. Next to it, mine. The journal contained the same looping handwriting, filling the last page: "She doesn't take them. They join her." A sound rose from behind me, soft footsteps. I turned, flashlight trembling. The beam caught her face for the first time. She wasn't a monster. She looked human, pale, her eyes empty but calm. When she spoke, her voice was a whisper that filled the entire room. "You came like the others. You couldn't let it rest." I stepped back toward the stairs, but they were gone, just solid wall. My radio hissed, the same static as before, then a faint echo of my own voice. "Case closed." The light flickered once, then all at once the room was filled with dozens of figures, men in uniforms, standing in silence, their faces blurred, their badges glinting faintly in the dark. Grave was among them. Sheriff Cole too. Their mouths moved in unison, whispering the same words I'd found in the journal. The air grew heavy. My vision blurred. I felt the weight of something pulling at me, not physically, but through memory, through the cracks of everything I'd seen. I dropped the flashlight. It hit the ground and rolled, illuminating my own boots. Another pair of feet stood beside them, bare, motionless. The last thing I remember is the phone ringing upstairs. Once. Then silence. 2 days later, a patrol unit found my cruiser parked on River Road. Engine running. Door open. No sign of a struggle. Inside the house, the basement was empty except for a single chair, a badge resting on the seat. The official report lists me as missing in action. The time of disappearance, 3:17 a.m. They sealed the property again. But the next night, the department's security cameras flickered on at exactly that time. For less than a second, the feed showed a man in uniform sitting at a desk, writing something in a notebook. The badge on his chest read number 4381. My name.